Welcome everybody to the latest edition of the Inside Track. It's awesome to have our latest guest, Jessica Yarmey, with us. It's our first episode of the new series, so series 5. Where's the time gone, Glenda? Absolutely crazy. So welcome aboard, Jessica. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm so honored to be kicking off season 5. No pressure, right?
Wow, none at all. But the fact that you are such a superstar in the US, and we'll get on to that, I think you start the podcast extremely well. But let's bring Glenda in. We don't want to obviously leave her out at the start. So, how are you, Glenda? How was your trip abroad?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Ryan. And I'm just noticing how busy you look from what's on your board at the back.
Funnily enough, I was telling Jessica earlier, that's probably from a month ago. I tend to write it all down. It looks great. And then I work from dodgy piles on the left-hand side. So, yeah.
Looks very organised.
Absolutely. So probably the best place to start, Jessica, is really because obviously the US guys will probably know you really well and know your story. But I guess some of the guys in the UK won't have. So do you want to run us through who Jessica is, what your career was and how you got to where you are now?
Sure. I have been an athlete my entire life. I grew up playing soccer, playing some other sports. Wow. Played, I say soccer, you say football, played soccer in college.
We'll let you have
and just lived that life. And when I got out of school, really started my career in marketing and was in restaurant marketing, was in restaurant franchising. And it really wasn't until 2012, so almost 10 years into my career, that I was able to overlap my love for marketing with my love for franchising, and actually started at Gold's Gym. So I took a marketing role at Gold's Gym and have been in the fitness industry ever since. Spent some time in big box, spent some time low cost, high volume, and then went to the boutique fitness space, which is where I am still to this day. And I just love it from a workout perspective, but then also from a community and engagement perspective. It's just bringing out all that's good about fitness and wellness. And I get to do that on a day-to-day basis.
I think sorry, Claire, I was going to say, I think the great thing is, though, because you started in franchising in restaurants, it probably gave you an amazing grounding in franchising, because the fitness world does it, but I don't necessarily think they've grasped it in the same way that a lot, like the McDonald's, like the big food franchises in the world, throughout the world, not just the US, have got franchising nailed. And I think we're still learning in the fitness industry. So I think it's a great base for you to start from there.
Yeah, I started working on the Burger King business. So you kind of nailed it with where I started, and talk about just diving into the deep end of franchising and even brand building. And it was fascinating to kind of see the inner workings of how they made decisions, how they kind of got consensus across different promotions and what direction the brand was going to be moving in. And when I talk to people now about getting into fitness as a career, either as a franchise owner or as a, entrepreneur with aspirations of being a franchise owner eventually, I always compare it to restaurant, because I'm like, fitness is easy compared to restaurant. You don't have food expiration dates. You don't have a lot of the moving pieces that restaurants have. So I love working in the fitness space, and I'm psyched to be here with you guys, because I can talk about working in fitness literally all day long. But I love to bounce it off of people with your backgrounds.
You know what I find quite interesting there is my gut reaction, and we love challenging our guests. It's in fitness, though, you have this big dynamic where you have to deal with people's moods, attitudes, and motivations for exercise. At least if you go in for food as the customer, you could be in a bad mood, but you'll still eat the burger. You could be in a good mood and still eat the burger, right? And it doesn't change the burger, if you see what I'm saying. Whereas fitness has got that idiosyncrasy that can be quite difficult. And I wondered, Jessica, what you think about Ryan's point. I think that fitness still sometimes struggle to get that level of brand consistency in franchise compared to your Burger Kings, your McDonald's. What would you say? What do you think is the big challenge in fitness to get that right?
I think to your first point, the people who are great in fitness love people and love people, whether they're on a high or whether they're on a low. And sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come from meeting somebody where they're at, and maybe that's not in a good place today. Maybe that's in a dark place, but you have that connection. And once you have that connection at that dark place, you are never losing them as a member. You're never losing them as a super fan of your business. So I know there's a lot of different people who work in fitness for a lot of different reasons, but I think the purists who are in fitness because we live this lifestyle and we want to spread this lifestyle to as many people as possible, will take those good days right along with the bad. And I think that's what's going to make us really successful as business owners and franchise owners. You know, to your point about franchising, it takes longevity in order to build a brand that's a household name recognition brand. So when I started at Gold's Gym, it had been a brand name for 50 years. And it's a long time. And across those 50 years, you know, almost some of the fragmentation in the brand started to come over time. So the challenge in brand building is not just understanding who you are today, but who do we want to be 50 years from now, and see if you can keep it on that same trajectory so that there's that consistency, not sameness, but consistency. Like, you're going to evolve as a brand. You're going to maybe change some of the ways that you say things, but who are you at your core? And as long as that stays consistent, you have all of the chance in the world to be a global franchise household name kind of brand. And that's definitely what inspires me on a daily basis, because I think there's so much blue ocean and opportunity to build global brands in the fitness space today, because there's not too many who are sitting out there playing that game right now.
You know what's fascinating there, and I just love that you brought that up, is this is where you start to talk my language, because I'm a resilience expert, and we talk about understanding your purpose in life to be a resilient person. But I don't see it any different with business. To be a resilient business, you need to know what your core purpose is. And to know your core purpose, it really stems from your values. And, you know, if you think of airline companies, Southwest Airlines, if you think of drinks company, Coca-Cola, any of the big brands that have sustained themselves over time, you know what they stand for? They don't just focus down on process or, you know, this is our product. They go way deeper than that. And I think that what you just said there is so powerful. You know, really understanding what's important to you and how you can, because that doesn't need to change even if the market or the landscape changes. Your values can stay consistent, right? And I think that's brilliant advice for anybody.
Well, I'll just picking on that point then, Jessica, in terms of, because obviously you've worked with some big brands. You've also obviously developed your own as an entrepreneur. What would you say is the hardest point in creating that brand voice and that brand journey from the outset?
Simplicity, but depth at the same time. You want to be clear with what you're saying. You want to be simple. You want to be memorable. You want to have words that are in people's minds after 1 or 2 times hearing them, not 7. You know, the faster you could get to that, you know, top of mind kind of place.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, you also need to say something bigger than just what the words are. Yeah. And I think all of it is difficult, but I also think all of it is easy. Like, it's in my blood to be a brand builder. And I love putting brand pieces together so that you can connect with someone on a level that's much more meaningful than just surface level. And, you know, I think that to tie in what Glenda was talking about with franchising internationally with fitness has this opportunity to have these heartstrings, to have these like emotional connections to people. And that can span borders. Absolutely. So I think it is all about having messaging that's clear enough that it can translate literally globally, and can still connect globally, but then also give someone like something to really bite into and something to really challenge them, because that's what this is all about now. It's like, it's pushing yourself to go to a next level, whether that's a next level in physical fitness, in mental fitness, in overall well-being. The game is just that self-improvement game. And so you want to have more than just, there has to be motivation there has to be inspiration there. And that inspiration usually comes from things that make you think, and that comes from the depth.
You talk a lot, even not mentioning the word marketing, but obviously that runs through your brains. The importance of marketing, the importance of messaging and the brand position. And I was just thinking back to my friend who wrote a really amazing marketing book, and it taught me so much, because he said, how do you stand out in the sea of sameness? And then what you realize is, if you go to a sector like mobile phones, for example, you go to all their websites, they all talk the same language in that sector. If you then go to another sector, they all talk the same language. And it was really illuminating when I read his book, because he said, well, how do you stand out in the sea of sameness? And I think that's what franchise has to consider. You've got lots of competition in the fitness industry, and the member is looking for someone that's going to stand out. And we know that you were the founder before, Jessica, of KickHouse Fitness, and now you do FlexSociety. But I just wondered if you could sort of share with us how you managed to do that in both those businesses. How do you stand out in this sea of sameness? Because it does exist. We all think we need to talk the same language in our sector, and therefore we all start to look the same. I just wondered what your thoughts were.
Anyone who follows me on social media probably knows how I will answer this, but the way that you stand out in a sea of sameness is to show up as you, because no one else is you.
I love that.
I'm a female entrepreneur in a male-dominated fitness industry, in a male-dominated business model of franchising, and I could either kind of conform and lead with my male energy always, or I could just be me and show up in this completely different way. And the only reason it's different is because it's me. And I'm at a point in my career where I'm comfortable showing up 100% authentically. I put wins out there on the board. I put losses out there on the board. If I'm, if I'm not having a good moment, I'll post about that just to be authentic about it. So
what does that look like? What does that look like? What did it look like in both your businesses? What did it mean to be authentic in building those brands? What is it to be led by you and those brands? I'm just fascinated. What is that authenticity in terms of how it looks like?
So with KickHouse, it's a kickboxing modality, which is, again, a male dominated modality. And the way that I chose to not just build the brand, but to show up for the brand was, I'm going to bring my best self to the table, but I'm going to leave room for you to sit at the table with me, and the next person and the next person and the next person. So I'm not going to be that male dominated ego in the space. This is the way, my way or the highway. No, we're building this together. It's truly going to be a family. I'm encouraging you to build it along with me. I'm giving homework out to people who I know have superpowers who haven't yet stepped into that superpower. I'm pushing them to support building the business with me, getting them on board with growing the business together as one. And I see that as an opportunity in building FlexSociety as well, and almost doubling down on that space where my goal for FlexSociety is truly to show people they are stronger than they know. That's a fitness awareness. You can lift more than you realize. You can have a stronger core than you know. You can do all of these things from a resistance training perspective, but you can also show up in life in a stronger way than you know. And how are we going to get to that? By doing it together, by sharing learnings, by giving you space to step into our family through entrepreneurship, through content creation, through, motivation. You have a place on this team, in this family, and we're all going to get better where we grow together. And so that's me. Like, that's why, like, that's how I'm kind of showing up for my brands. And that's where those brands are going to live because of how I'm showing up. Like, that's
what's interesting. Sorry, Glenda. What's interesting that you say there, but you also see going on a lot more now because of the way social media's moved, is I think the heads of these businesses, and we will come on to FlexSociety in a moment, but what's happening is it is actually driving that way. So the personalities are pushing those businesses forward. So whereas before you had, if you have a look at the big conglomerates, they were the entity in themselves. So if you look at Coca-Cola and all those sorts of things, they were the business in itself, and you didn't really have the head or whatever out on social media pushing the values, their personal values. And I think a lot more of that is coming with people like yourself. And I think I know you say obviously it's a male-dominated environment, and traditionally it has been. But I think if you have a look in the fitness space as it is now, I think a lot more of the growing business, the big entrepreneurial space, tends to be women. If you have a look, I mean, obviously I work closely with Glenda, but you look at all the ones that are new and exciting and vibrant and things are happening. It doesn't tend to be the male side of it. They're still in that traditional hide behind the brand, whereas the ones that have got a voice from the individual do tend to very much be the female element of our industry, which is great. So and I love that. I love the personality side of stuff. I think people should show what they are, and I think if you're going to drive a business forward, I think you should almost have a head of state of that business, and they're the face of it. So I think you're doing the right thing for sure.
Yeah, I think it's almost a necessity as a founder to put yourself out there, because you can single-handedly establish and communicate, here's who we are as a company, as a culture. When you get to a certain size, there's less need to be that, because you just put marketing dollars toward communicating. But when you're in a baby brand stage, which I am in and have been in, for the past 3 years, there's a pressure on resources consistently. Yeah. So do I want to take marketing dollars and communicate brand, or do I want to take 15 minutes of my day, put it toward content to communicate brand? And I'm comfortable at this point aligning my values with my company's values and communicating both at the same time. I think there are a lot of companies that reach a certain size and that get to a certain place culturally where there's question marks on their culture. And I think your consumers can start to feel that, your members can start to feel that if we're talking about the fitness space. And culture is such a buzzword, but it at the end of the day comes from the leader. Absolutely. And so I feel a responsibility to show up and just consistently talk about what I'm about and hope that trickles to the right people who are going to eventually build this with me.
I mean,
well, the great thing is it brings people with you. Sorry, Glenn. It brings people that align themselves to your personality. They're the people, especially at the start, they're the people you want to work with, don't you? You want people like you who aspire to be like you, who get motivated by you to be in that small growth mindset. So it's good.
Yep.
I was just thinking, if people go back on this podcast over the last 7 minutes, there is so many leadership lessons that Jessica gives us there that maybe just roll off for you, Jessica, because you're living it. But actually, there's so many nuggets in there that I just love. There's so much, without even directly saying it, but there's so much reference to culture. And we know that, the famous Drucker statement, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? I think that you demonstrate the absolute criticality of building a culture for growth. And I love just what you mentioned about collaboration and being honest. And allowing people to also show up as their authentic self, and that they have a contribution to make in helping you build a business just rather than just be led. And I think that's super inspirational for the people that are working with you, and great leadership lessons there. I'd love, because I'm sure people want to ask, Jessica, they'll be crying out to ask. Tell us where you are now with FlexSociety and what the big vision is. You know, how many sites are you at? What do the sites look like? What does it mean to be a franchise? You know, I'd just love to hear a lot more about that journey.
Yeah, so the FlexSociety Fitness Studio is going to be a modality that's a blend of strength training and stability training. So it's going to use equipment that's manufactured and produced in the United States by Stroops. And the main product we're going to be leveraging is Slastics, which is essentially like an elastic band, but with fabric covering. So we're going to be able to tackle that strength training, the resistance through the flexible Slastics, which is where the flex comes from in the name.
There's something going to be there for sure.
Yeah. But then, you know, I spent 3 years at Club Pilates, so we'll have some elements of the stability training, more Pilates-esque kind of aspects that start to come in. And the end result is going to be a fitness class that's accessible to all fitness levels. I love strength training as an entry point for people into fitness. So I'm really excited to get this live and launched and really start building the society, because I think it comes through in terms of members and like growing the actual member community, but it also will come through with what we were just talking about, where like find the others, find the people you align with, find the people you want to build with, and grow fast together. So that's really where the name.
And where are we on the journey at the moment, Jessica? Where are we? Lot far away from the studios? Are we almost there? What's the
Yeah, we're within a few months of opening the first studio. So awesome. It will be here in Texas, which is exciting. That's where I'm based. But the goal is really to grow rapidly and eventually franchise the concept. And I would love to have it be a global brand. So if anyone's listening in the UK and wants to bring it across the pond, you know, send me a message. We'll make that happen. But I think there's so many interesting things happening in the fitness space right now and in the franchising space. And I really hope to leverage all of the trends in building FlexSociety, like riding as many of the waves as we can.
No,
I mean, it's interesting. Sorry, Glenda, go on.
Ryan.
I was going. Sorry, excited. I was going to say franchising in the UK, because the US has got franchising it nailed. It is what it is. It's part of the culture. It's part of the structure and the fabric of how you guys do business. In the UK, it's still a sort of we're not quite. There are obviously there's some that do very, very well anytimes here and stuff like that, but it's still not massive, is it, Glenda? It's still not. It's not. You would still, if you had a couple £100,000 in your bank, you sat there going, do I franchise or do it on my own? There's still that argument. When the US is very much more, we'll go and invest, they do it right. So I think there's a real opportunity in the UK for new brands still to make it in, and it'd be good to see more that come and do it right. I think that's the key. There's a few that don't do it so well. What would you say? I guess I was coming on to a question. What would you say is the biggest pitfalls? Because obviously you've done franchising before, you've worked in that setting up franchising. What would you say is the biggest pitfalls as a franchisor when you guys are looking to grow and develop? What you guys need to look out for as you grow forward?
Internationally, is definitely a challenge. Like, you need to find great partners who are aligned with the values that you've established domestically. And that's more difficult than it might seem to be on paper. And maybe it's the same challenge even in the US, especially your early franchisees, your early franchise owners. Like, they have to be people who see the overall vision of what you're trying to build and really be the initial advocates for the business. Okay. So it is all about collaboration, and it is all about partnership and getting early partners, whether they're early domestic partners or whether they're early international partners, and just understanding like what are we trying to do here and what's the master plan, and having people align around that plan. You can really do amazing things when you are aligned, and that's one of the amazing parts of the franchise business model. But that's also where it has the highest likelihood to fall apart. You know, to go back to like referencing the Burger King business, there's no reason that Burger King couldn't have grown as fast as a Chick-fil-A over the last 5 years, except for the fact that their alignment really started to lack and the resources started to be pulled out of the business. So you can learn from everything. You can learn from examples outside of the industry. You can learn from examples inside the industry. You can learn from success stories, and you can learn from failures. So I think it's great to just always be talking to people and reading things and just seeing what, listening to great podcasts like this one, and just kind of seeing how other people are seeing things, and learn from that and apply it to your own business. And it's just the greatest continuing education you can find.
Jessica, I'm fascinated to know, you mentioned the modality, which obviously we now get is different. I'm assuming that was what's really attractive about that is the CapEx for equipment sounds, without knowing what too much, it sounds like it's going to be quite low compared to other types of franchise where you have to be spending massive money on cardio equipment. I take it this is more functional, whereby the equipment CapEx outlay is going to be a lot less, I would guess.
It will be an accessible model to get open, not just from an equipment perspective, and having the relationship with Stroops does help us make like really favorable equipment packages, but also just from a square footage. And, to go back to, to be a small box, and to go back to like franchising in the UK, I think one of the limitations that you guys have is a lot of the real estate. And to be able to be in a 2,200 square foot box and be, get enough stations together so that it models out well, is really that's the opportunity. And I think, if there's not a lot of boutique fitness there yet, there certainly will be, as more and more concepts kind of start to see that there's opportunity over there.
I think the key in the UK is the fact that London does well. So from a boutique perspective, London does well because it's easy to get to all these different places. So someone will have a Pilates membership, a yoga membership, a Barry's bootcamp membership, a Soul Cycle, and they just flip between them all. And but when you come up to where I live in Yorkshire, it's probably a bit like Texas, and it's miles from everywhere. So you can't really have this scenario where you've got a membership or I've got a pass for this, pass for that. You end up joining one or the other. So I think that's where the boutiques tend to do well in London. Then as soon as they try and spread out, it just doesn't work, and it falls on its backside.
Maybe because they haven't been doing it well, Ryan.
That could be well. You took the words out of my mouth, because we should talk offline just for the pure fun factor. But my old brand, and you know this, Ryan, but Soulgenic as a brand, the boutique 10,000 square foot site that I owned that I sold to Anytime, you could have put it anywhere. And it was so unique. It was so set up to scale. I didn't scale it in the end, but that brand could have went globally anywhere. And I think what was protection in that brand was that within boutique, it still had, there was 3 main programs, but there was also frills extra. But in terms of the boutique class space, there was so much variety that you wouldn't need to think about where to go next, because we had the strength genre, we had the flexibility genre, and we had the mindset genre, and it was really cleverly done. And, I'm fascinated to know what makes it different, because I am going to be quite critical here and say that a lot of people, even people who have done okay, I'm quite surprised they've done okay, because they have maybe done product, they've done price, but in the old boring marketing textbook, you know that the 7 Ps exists, and the retailers, the hospitality guys do that really well. You know, the ambience, the physical appearance, the way they train the staff, understanding people are critical. In the UK, we've not always paid people well. And then we have this massive drop-off when they do too many classes a week, that the performance falls off a cliff. So I just wondered if you could even just give us a little bit of insight as to how the other parts of that marketing mix are going to make this a better run franchise than some of the ones we see. I just wondered. Yeah. That is what you need for scale, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the product is the most important part of any boutique concept. If the product isn't there, you're not going to be able to get it to model. To your point, the product offering, there's multiple class formats. So if you're an athlete, even at a professional level, to have the ability to train with resistance equipment that's not just free weight equipment, but it also factors in and it gets harder as the lift progresses. Yeah, that's where the bands really like come into play and can benefit like elite athlete. Go down to your 80-year-old grandmother and she has trouble standing up and keeping balance. So the ability to train in supported environments, but train your balance, train the small muscles as well as the big muscles. So the way that we'll structure the studio and the modalities, there'll be multiple formats and they'll have that range of audience running from like elite athlete, with progressions in the class exercises down to more of a stability training kind of class format, more of a, I don't even want to say recovery, but training small muscles and training for balance and just function through life, not even athletic performance. So I think a lot of the modalities today, if you're looking at what's in the market, and Ryan, you just mentioned a bunch of them, they train big muscles and there's not a big emphasis on form or technique, or, you're a little bit left to translate the workout how you see fit.
It's almost get the heart rate up as quickly as we can, keep it there as long as we can. It doesn't really matter what we're doing. In a lot of the ones that they do that, it's the actual programming isn't that important as long as they've got their MyZone on and their heart rate's in the rhythm.
Right, as long as the sweat and the calorie burn is there. And what's fascinating that's happening now, and I talked about riding waves. I'm big on just like watching what's happening in the industry and watching what's happening with consumers. There's a lot of emphasis right now on longevity and recovery training. And you don't get to longevity by maxing out your heart rate 5 to 7 times a week. You get to longevity by taking care of your body. And I think the more people get educated around fitness, and maybe we're getting into like 1%er land, but FlexSociety is going to bring somebody in, meet them where they're at, and help them level up and level up their understanding of what's happening. And even if they don't have the full education around like, why do I want to work big muscles as well as small muscles, they'll feel it in their body. Like, oh, I feel more confident walking up and down stairs as an 80-year-old. I don't understand the fact that it's because I'm working both big and small stability muscles as well as mover muscles in this class, but they'll feel it throughout their day. So I think the longevity piece is going to be huge over the next 10 to 20 years.
It's really interesting you say that, actually, Jessica, because I was reading a really interesting article about triathletes. And you think when we look at fit athletes, you're looking at cross-country skiers, swimmers, boxers, and triathletes, aren't you, in terms of the super fit? Their average age of death is 5 years younger than the national average. So you think these guys are super fit, but actually, because the guy was talking about saying how potentially the heart only has so many beats, and when you push it to a certain level, you use those beats up, and eventually that your body doesn't know. I'm not a scientist in that or a cardiologist, but this is what the article was saying. But they did a study and they were showing you how how much younger these triathletes were dying on average. I think it was about 74 or something, the average triathlete lives still. And you're like, that is amazing considering how fit those guys are. So when you talk about longevity or training and you don't really want to be doing 5 really serious HIIT training sessions a week, you're sort of going, actually, the two aren't potentially in balance. That longevity and doing HIIT 5 days a week. So you're obviously hitting on the right angle there. One question I did have for you was, because obviously you've done this a few times, when you create a brand like this and you're looking at the marketing, you're looking at the modality and the functionality of the classes, which comes first? Do you look at it and go, we need to make this sellable? Or do you look at it and go, I want to build an amazing product and then I'm going to come up with my marketing strap line and everything to fit that model? Or do we have to sort of blend the two together and go, actually, we need to give a bit on this to make it sellable? I've never been in from a ground like you're doing. So do you take those in, or do you literally go, right, I'm building the concept, this is what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to work out how the hell I'm going to sell it?
It's an interesting question, because I posted recently about naming this concept, and there was a debate internally with my team about like this cool name that we had or this really like functional name. And as I was talking about the two options, at the end of the day, you could do either, right? It's more just a question of like the resources that are going to have to go in one direction or the other. So if you build an amazing product, your word of mouth is going to be phenomenal. So then to get people to that, your marketing strategy is just get people in the door. It's going to sell itself. Whereas if let's say your like model is amazing, so you're going to be able to like bring people in from a franchise ownership perspective, but maybe not like leading with the workout. So your play is going to be different. Like get them into class, make sure they like love it, and then hit them with like, here's the facts around how you're going to make like all this money. And the ideal scenario is you're able to do both. The ideal scenario is you're going to have a great product and you're going to have a great offering, or the ideal scenario in your brand is like you're going to have a cool brand, plus it's going to be a memorable brand. But oftentimes you end up in one world or another, and there's no right or wrong, because in the back of your mind, and I don't know the concepts that are in the UK, there's concepts that are average but have an amazing brand attached to them, and somehow they're out there growing like crazy.
Absolutely.
And then there's concepts that have an amazing offering that like are maybe not growing as quickly because they don't have the other component. So it's just a different game you're choosing to play if you go in one direction or the other.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there, Jessica. At what price point and volume does this model work at for a franchisee?
So you're going to have
price point and number of people.
You're going to have 5 different pricing tiers. So depending on your market, here in the US, like a New York City is much different than an Evansville, Indiana. But in the boutique space, as long as your average membership cost is around $130 a month, you end up needing around 250 people to like make it unlock. And then from there, it's just all, all icing on the cake.
I think you're absolutely right. I get super excited about the idea of the franchises moving into the small box. I don't know if you guys seen the article by Dave Mortensen the other week on LinkedIn, maybe last week. Is he COO of Anytime or CEO? I can't remember, but he's a great guy. And their remit for Anytime now is to get to 10,000 facilities. They're nearly at 5,000, and they want to do that now super fast. And they are going into small box, studio-based offerings. Really fascinating article that really demonstrates the ambitiousness that they're going after. And you can say whatever you want, but as a franchise model, where I think they do the best is they totally get the power of community.
Yeah, and
Anytime I'm flying with community.
And for me, it's any growth in the fitness industry is helpful. I think a lot of the issues that are maybe in the fitness industry right now is like, we do a lot to like talk to ourselves, or we do a lot to talk to the 1%ers who use fitness already as a daily tool in their life. And it's more so, can we get to a place where we have scale, where we have so many different entry points for people to get into fitness? And I would put my entry point at a higher price point next to an anytime, any day of the week, you know, because it's a different experience, and we're maybe like talking in a different way and providing a different level of experience. But where they win, I win, because is somebody going to go to their, you know, their center, their studio or their gym, and then eventually realize like, okay, I want to go to the next level. I want to experience something different. I want a different approach. I need to mix up the modality that I'm training in, and then I win. Like, where they win, I will win. So I think it's that game of abundance that we all need to be playing in fitness, that there are so many people who need to make positive changes to their health. We all need to be hustling. We all need to be growing. We all need to be adding to our footprints. And there's space and opportunity for us all to do so.
It's amazing, actually. I was going to say it's amazing, actually. That the UK is only at 15%. I know the US is about 20%, isn't it, in terms of penetration? So you think you've got all these clubs out there, and yet we're still not even scratching the surface of. I mean, obviously we need to take out the infirm who can't train, and the certain groups that aren't really able to. But even so, we're probably still missing 50% of the population that is available, and it's trying to find that concept that makes them go, actually, I want to try that. So whether that is like we were talking about earlier, you train at Planet, and it's like going, well, either you go budget, that's for one person. Obviously, you've got FlexSociety, that's for someone else. Anytime is something, and it's trying to make sure. But there's absolutely more than enough people out there for massive growth still in our industry. That's the great thing about it.
You know how I love to be controversial. So Jessica, I love doing this because I know you're the type of guest that will take this on. I want to be a little bit controversial for a minute, because I think the customer, the consumer, does not understand the difference between fitness and their overall health. So what I mean by that, sometimes they don't rock up at your facility and it's not physical in the slightest. It might be they've drank too much. You know, Ryan knows I bang the drum. I'm a wellness expert, and I still struggle that our industry failed to get this, because we don't penetrate as much as we could, because we see the customer from the physical domain when much of their challenges is sitting in some of the other well-being domains. And I just wondered, not FlexSociety for a minute, but what can we do as an industry to improve that? Because when our customers don't turn up at the gym, I don't actually now believe that there are many clubs out there, and I'm going to be really controversial. I don't think they all give a damn about making that customer get back in, as long as they're paying their membership, because we know it's a lot of hard work to keep a track of a big volume of members. Now, if you're only going to do 250, 300, you can give service that loads of them can, and that's going to be one of your USPs. But what can we do better as an industry to understand that the physical domain is just one part of a much bigger picture for the client?
I think you can think about your offering as a swimming pool that has a shallow end and then has a really deep end.
Yeah.
Maybe too often new people come to us and we're excited for them and we're like, you're going to love this. And we just shove them into the deep end and like, have a great time. And the reality is we need to take them to the edge of the pool. We need to tell them, take your shoes off, take your socks off, put them right here. Take your first step in. How does that feel? Did that feel good? Amazing. You're doing a great job. Like your level of service at the shallow end is different. Your level of engagement in the shallow end is different. And it's on you as a coach, as a staff member, as a front desk person to make sure that first step into the shallow end and then the second, every step is a win. Every step needs to be celebrated. Every time they swipe their keychain, it's like, yes, one more step in, one more step in. Someday they're going to get to the place where they're like, you know what? I'm ready. I get it. I'm ready for the deep end. Push me into the deep end. Okay, great. You're on your own. You don't even have floaties. Go swim. But like for a lot of people, it is terrifying to be in the shallow end. And I've been in the fitness space my whole life. I have gone to numerous gyms as a member, as a professional. There are still clubs that I walk into, still studios that I walk into, and I'm like, yo, I don't belong here. Yeah. And it's terrifying. And my Gold's Gym peeps will like appreciate, like in the movie Pumping Iron, where Arnold goes to ballet to like be out of his comfort zone and do ballet. We all as an industry collectively need to go to a place you've never gone before, go into a Zumba class, go into a ballet experience, go to like a go-kart racing track and get out of your comfort zone, go as a first timer and see how your heart like feels walking into a place where you don't belong. And we have to realize that's how people feel every time they come in to see us. And so those first steps in are critically important and either set someone up for great success and changing their lives, or it sets them up to have even more fear the next time they come in.
Isn't it interesting though? Isn't it interesting though? Because if you take your kids, it's like my kids at that age where they're obviously they've started new sports. They've started hockey, started whatever field hockey for you guys, not the ice hockey. And so they start that. But even as a parent, you turn. And I'm like you, Jessica. So is Glenda. We played sport all our life. But even me turning up to a new club for sport, which is second nature to me, whether it be cricket, football, rugby, whatever, it's just second nature. But to turn up and you sort of go. When you're a kid, someone takes you there, they throw you into that team. You don't really have a choice because your old man's taking you. You're doing hockey tonight. That's what's happening. But as an adult, you don't have that person dragging you along, taking you there and going, get on with it. And so that fear that you're talking about there, that fear of going, oh, it's a new place. I mean, I still get nervous with CrossFit clubs. I walk in there and just go, oh, this isn't for me. And it's not my thing, but it's that you don't have the person holding your hand like you do when you're a kid, and you almost got to create that environment, don't you, where you got this new person coming in that they feel they've got someone holding their hand at the start.
Well, and what I love about the boutique fitness space is a lot of times your existing members are that person who holds their friend's hand and brings them in and introduces them to your family. And imagine that, if you have your friend with you at the swimming pool and they're like, it's fine, jump in. It's so much easier to jump in. So I think there's so much that we need to lean into as an industry, just about like empowering our members to be really good ambassadors for us, and not just through, cheesy referral programs, but like legitimately like be a part of our team, help bring this person in and onboard them into our community in a way that's going to set them up for success. Because you should never feel like you're on your own, just getting like pushed into the deep end.
I love all of what you gave there, Jessica. I just wondered if you transcended that non-intimidation ethic into the styling of these clubs, what would be the footprint in terms of, I know you said about the size, but what would they look like?
I like the smaller footprint because it almost forces people to like get to know each other. It forces people to have their place and like, here's my station and I'm going to be, going to my station. I think in the boutique space, maybe there's, you kind of want your spaces to be cool. And the cool factor is definitely a part of boutique fitness, but sometimes it works to your detriment, especially for the first timers. So it needs to be cool enough that you want to spend time there, but it also can't be icy and cold. And white is such a common color in boutique fitness. or black because they're easy colors. But the reality is, like, the warmer you can make a space, the more inviting you can make a space, the more approachable it's going to feel when someone walks in, and not having massive like lobby spaces. Like, the closer your front desk can be to the door, the less intimidating it's going to be to walk in. And this is not just in fitness. Like, walk into your neighborhood bubble tea place, like walk into a restaurant, walk into like a car dealership. Like, all of these places are places you can learn from, and then take those learnings and apply to your fitness business.
So what would be, because I know people out there that might, be really pricking up their ears to this, what would be a standard, not getting you held to this, by the way, but just what's a ballpark entry price for a franchise of FlexSociety going to look like? What kind of money are we talking?
It'll end up being around $250,000 to $300,000 US to open a franchise when we do offer to sell franchises.
Yeah, awesome. Really cool.
Really.
Definitely one to watch out for, right, Ryan?
Oh, absolutely. Now we're fastly running out of time, so there's a couple of things I'd like to pick your brains, because obviously as much as we'd love to, Jessica, we can't keep you here all night or all day for you. In terms of if you were to pick sort of three things of a gym owner that they're looking to move things forward, what would you say, just from a marketing perspective? Because obviously marketing's moved on massively in the last sort of 10 or 15 years. It's very social based and everything else. What would you say if they were going to focus on three key things to drive their business forward from a marketing perspective? What would you look at?
Number one would be self-awareness. I have a marketing background, and so I'm comfortable putting content out. Not everyone should be putting content out.
Well put. Like tactfully said.
But I also I stay in my lane though. I won't post a lot of fitness related content, even though I do work out. I don't have certifications to speak on a certain like platform, and so I stay in my lane. And I think having self-awareness around like, what is your lane? And if your lane is as a practitioner, great. Like, we need content in that lane. I think content has to be a part of any founder's strategy right now, just because it so quickly can establish brand. Then your marketing dollars can establish lead volume, and you don't need marketing dollars to establish brand and then have other dollars going toward lead volume. So I think establishing like the what behind the, what you're doing and putting it out there consistently is really important. I think if you're a founder who maybe like wants to take the next step and grow, either via your own company-owned locations or via franchising, like having that close look at your brand, and maybe having an outsider do a close look at your brand. Like, sometimes we get in the weeds and we can't see ourselves, like, or can't see the forest for the trees. Having someone say, okay, tighten this up, add this element, remove this element, so that you have clarity of who you are as a brand before you go and expand. And I think thirdly is maybe blurring the lines between the two. It's like, what are we doing that's going to be unique in the space, and leaning into that, and leading with that, and doing so in a way that's approachable to as broad of an audience as possible. And I always keep my marketing efforts in the shallow end. Does you very little good to like market to the deep end. The deep end swimmers are going to find the best pool and they're going to hang out there. They don't need to be marketed to or want to be marketed to. You need to market to the shallow end, bring more people to the pool, and then have them, go on their journey. But I think in an age where there's never enough resources to do all the things that we need to do, especially like early stage businesses, you have to pick your priorities, and the priority is introducing new people to your concept.
I know we could talk about this all day long, but I'm still fascinated we're not seeing more franchises popping up for things like older adults, some of the niched down target populations, because I've always wondered why they don't do the older population, because they've got more money.
So part of my legacy, we'll say, as like positioning the Club Pilates brand was putting it broadly into that age range. Yeah. We had two primary audiences that we targeted. Nancy, she was like a 57-year-old mom, and then Kathleen, who was like a grandma. And
absolutely. I think there's definitely a market there. I don't know why more people are not thinking, excuse the pun, out the box there. You know, like we see so many of the same type of brands emerging though.
But you know why? Because it's not cool. It's not Instagram.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. But sadly, and I mean, I know we will do another podcast with you on this, because I feel like, and it will open up a can of worms, but we've went back the way in some regard. You know, I remember talking to my colleagues, because I'm showing my age. I've been in the industry, you know, Jessica, like you, 30 years, right? And I feel like we've went back the way, because when we said, oh, we need to get away from no pain, no gain, we do have a huge amount of that going on again. You know, the girls, sorry if I'm just being blunt, but some of the girls are bigger than the guys now. Because that's been a fashionable thing. And
it's
you're right,
Instagram.
Our industry is very trend-based. But I do think we've went back the way in some regard.
Well, there you go, Glenda. Get your money out. You can go after the old folk. That can be your.
Listen, don't tempt me, because there is something in that. You know, there's a few target groups that I'm thinking of. I mean, you've got me started, but the one that I would do right now, I categorically would. So if you're out there, you can steal it. I don't mind. But if I was going to put my money in anything right now, I would probably go back female only, which will shock you. And I would niche right down to a menopause brand that deals with the menopause treatment with fitness all in the one facility. You will see that come, and I think that would go massive.
There you go. You two could pick that one up offline. Not for me, that one.
You know my number.
Right. Exactly, but no, you're absolutely right. I guess it just depends. The more you niche down, the lower your numbers potentially.
I do think
it's crunching the numbers, isn't it?
Because I think with the problems of noise, I think that the more niche brands might get more positioning by being more noticeable because they're different. And I think that's where Jessica's got a great opportunity. And I will be absolutely delighted to see this when it opens, Jessica. And please share with us as much as you can, because it'll be lovely to see it come to fruition. I think
I'm sure it'll be all over LinkedIn.
Yeah, and with you at the helm, I know it's going to go really well. I feel like it's been a privilege to listen to your leadership insights for the guys.
Absolutely. Really one final question we have for you, Jessica, and we ask everybody this, so you won't get away with it, I'm afraid. But we ask everybody who inspires them, and we used to say not family because it's quite nice to see, but we don't mind. So it's really who or what inspires you to do what you do every day, because obviously you do a lot of stuff. Obviously you've done some great stuff in your career so far, but and you're incredibly enthusiastic. So what inspires you to do what it is that you do?
I am a daily listener and consumer of Gary V's content online. I listen to his podcast.
I'm listening to his book at the minute
when I'm in the gym, and it's outside of the fitness industry, of course, but it's like a daily reminder that representation matters. It's a daily reminder that I need to show up authentically and consistently tell my story and consistently share my journey. And the one most impactful thing that he said recently that is my new calling card really is, he's passionate about buying the New York Jets. And he said, the day might come that I get a chance to buy the New York Jets, and I put up, a certain amount of money, and every entrepreneur I've helped along the way puts up the rest. And for me, that's going to be like where my legacy starts to.
It probably only needs $1 from everybody he's helped anyway, and he'd be able to buy it. done that much work, hasn't he, with a lot of people. It's
he has, and I, on days where I post something and it gets 5 views or whatever, at least in my head I know like maybe those 5 people got value out of it. But that's really why I do what I do. That's how I show up. I'm not special. I did it. You can do it. If you really feel passionately about something, go build it. You can do it. And it's all about just like showing up and sharing along the way to make it seem less intimidating for people, because entrepreneurship is amazing, especially in the fitness space where like we need more people who are passionate about fitness, talking about fitness. It's not just a money game. It's like for the good of the people. And the more people we can bring into fitness that are championing that cause, the better off we're all going to be. So I'm happy to help anyone who's listening to this. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help you any way I can, because I'm on that like legacy grind at this point. That's what motivates me on a daily basis.
And that's
I still believe. Oh, sorry, Glenn, but I still believe that the whole reason we do what we do is to change lives. I mean, me and Glenda talk about it all the time. We've had some amazing guests on like yourself, and it just resonates to most of the people we talk to. It's not about building a brick and mortar building with some treadmills and some people come and have fun, but generally we change lives by doing what we do. Now, you're not going to change everyone's life. Some people will just be healthy and they'll go about their thing and do whatever. But those people that you do physically, you know, we stop diabetes, we change, you know, reduce obesity massively, all these huge changes that we can make as an industry. And I think that's what we get into it for, and that's and I can hear that passion come across. So absolutely fantastic. So really appreciate your time today, Glenda. I didn't know whether you had anything else.
No, I just want to reiterate, I found that very inspiring. I am definitely going to follow your story, Jessica. Excited to hear what comes next for you. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
Absolutely. If anybody wants to reach out to Jessica, all her details will be at the end of the podcast. So obviously reach out. You can find her all over LinkedIn. If you connect with her, you can't miss her. So absolutely fantastic. Appreciate your time today, and we will see you soon.
Season 5.